Have you ever died before? Have you ever seen so much of your own blood in the toilet that you could smell it? Have you freaked when looking at yourself in a mirror because your lips were blue? Have you ever been so desperate because your life is on the line and you know something has to change? My name is Daniele Favaro. I'm here with my friend Eli. We met because he's been coaching with the Napoleon Hills Foundation, which is a great organization, I believe, and actually I'm going to ask him about it. And we're here because we want to share together with you um, this self-healing journey that I went through and I'm offering for people to grow because life is about growth and evolution. That's one of my beliefs. So yeah, he like just introduce yourself, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name's Eli Shirley. I'm here in Calgary, Canada. I'm a chef by trade. I've been owning and operating plant-based restaurants here in Calgary for the past 12 years. And for as long as I can remember, I've been interested in self-development and following a journey of self-improvement, self-healing. And so when I met Daniele through a link through a Napoleon Hill, it was a Think and Grow Rich video. We made a connection through that because we both had this similar way of thinking. And from there, we just found that we had so many things in common. And that led us to what we're talking about today, which is the self-healing journey that Daniele has been going through and has shared with me. And I've been super intrigued to learn more about it. So I'm excited to hear more about the journey and hopefully learn a few of the techniques myself that I can apply in my life and put those towards, self-development and just towards that goal of becoming better every day.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I actually forgot to mention that I also am a wellness coach. I'm a trained transformational coach and hypnotist. I presented in Las Vegas last July at Hypnotos Live as a first-time presenter, first time I joined the event. Hypnotos Live is the most important event on hypnosis in the world. And I'm going to present again next July as a integral part of the event. And I'm saying this because to me, hypnosis is just a tool to increase our ability to change and create that transformation that we need to create, especially when we're having symptoms recurring and relapsing over and over. That's the idea. The idea I've been embracing through my life, self-healing journey through my life is that, again, the symptom is something to understand, listen to, understand, and decode because it's just asking for a transformation to happen. So this is the main idea. And did you want to start with any specific question, Eli, so that we can explain better
Yes,
of the
definitely.
process?
In that Facebook post that you mentioned, you said that you had a system that you use called LEAD. It's an acronym, and I'd love to know more about that and how you use that process.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that question. So the idea is lead is a process to guide self-healing because our body won't, what we want to not only understand, we want to really get into experience in our life is that our body, it's already self-healing.
Mm,
It's already self-healing and we just need to make the right choices so that we allow that process to happen more naturally. So the reason why I call it LEAD is because it's an acronym that stands for the four words: listen, empower, acquire, and dissolve. And each one of them is can happen with this specific order, or it can be adapted to the situation
mm,
which the person that I'm working with is going through. And it's all about basically, besides the work of the idea of working, it's the idea of educating. Because the reason why I was able to self-heal, it was because I did this research for over 20 years, which allowed me to understand that, again, to create this process, which is the leap process, to understand that our body is always doing something meaningful and
Hmm.
intelligent, right? Our job is to understand what's going on, understand what's happening, make the right choices so that we can enhance the self-healing process. Not sure if that's something that it's clear to you. Do you want me to go more into it?
Well, from what I understood, it seemed like you're giving the body, putting it in a state to have its full potential to self-heal, to do what it actually just does all the time, right? The body's always in a healing process, always in a healing state, and maybe something has knocked that off center, and we've come into dis-ease potentially for certain things.
That's right, just like
Hmm.
that. So the idea is that when the problem is that we have all let ourselves being scared and conditioned in a way that when something happens with our body that we are not prepared for,
Mm.
when a symptom shows up, both physically or psychologically, what is our most common reaction? We get worried, we get
Hmm.
scared, and we are looking for an external solution, right?
Yeah.
Either in conventional medicine and drugs, or we are looking for a natural solution. Depending on where we're at with our belief system, right? And of course, those are very valuable solutions, right? Because we need to be able to manage the symptom. If the symptom is very annoying, very limiting, very repetitive, and limiting us in our ability to do what we want, we need to have a way in which we can manage it and downsize the symptom, downgrade the symptom, right?
Mm.
Yet, the idea is that the symptom is not happening because there is a mistake in our body or something wrong with us or with our body. The symptom is happening because it's the result of a special biological program process that our body, our biology has created based on how we individually perceive the situation in our life. Does it make sense?
Yes, so far, yeah.
So the way that I easily try to explain this, we are all pretty much familiar with the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Hmm.
And we know that if there is uh, an immediate, very loud noise, like a firework, and we is not the end of the year, or it's not the 4th of July, and somebody explodes a firearm or a firework next door, and we hear this loud noise all of a sudden, we jump,
Hmm.
right? It probably has happened to you too, right? Something like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And that's not something that we can control. It's an automatic response,
Mm.
right? Why? Because something unexpected happens, and our body, our biology, our unconscious mind triggers this special biological program, which is like makes us create the adrenaline or the alertness to figure out what happened and what we need to do to
Yeah.
solve that situation, right? So the important thing is to understand that when something unexpected happens, our possible unconscious biological reaction is not something that we can choose at the moment. It just happens, right? So the next example I like to use is the example of the life, right? Imagine, Eli, that all of a sudden now, behind your screen that you're looking at in this call, it shows up a wild lion, you know,
Okay.
right? Yeah. Most likely, what would happen to you?
Yeah, that system's going to kick in. I'm going to have a huge rush of adrenaline. My body's going to
Yeah,
prime itself for survival.
you would freak out, to use the technical
Yeah,
term, right?
and I would freak out probably. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing to understand is that you would be aware of the fear after the
Ah, true.
emergency is gone.
Yes.
Because in that moment you would just be like either fighting for your life if the lion is attacking you,
Hmm.
or trying to escape if you have room to escape, or you would freeze as the gazelle does. Have you ever seen one of those videos in which the lion attacked by the gazelle attacked by the lion freezes for a few
Mm.
seconds? And that's a biological meaningful program because the gazelle is unconsciously trying to use that because when the lion sees the frozen prey, the lion gets to be disoriented for a few moments, and that's the chance for the gazelle to get up and fast as run as they can and save their
Mm.
life, right? So it's this fight of used to be only fight or flight. Now there's also the freeze part, right? Which is the evolution of
Oh,
knowing how our biology really works. So what I'm saying is that you would react automatically in one of
yeah,
these three ways, but that would be a conscious choice. It would be an automatic, unconscious, special program that your biology is going to run based on what? Based on who you are, your experiences, and your skills, to make it simple.
true. Okay.
Why? Because right now, if a lion was to show up, that's probably what's gonna happen with
Hmm.
you. But imagine said there is a different Eli in a parallel universe, and it's not you, but he's a skilled safari hunter who has killed dozens of lions, or a skilled lion tamer that works regularly in a circus and knows how to tame lions.
Okay.
You will probably still freak out, but not as much and not as for the same length of time as you would freak out if a lion was to show up now in your room.
Mm.
Does it make sense?
It does, yes.
So what
Maybe it
I'm
has to do
saying
with
is
experience or.
with the skills and the experience and
Hmm.
how we personally and subjectively interact with the world around us.
Hmm.
The same thing, to go back to talk about what I mostly work with, which is digestive issues, to make it simple, okay? But what is way more complex. Digestive issues usually are because we cannot, quote unquote, stomach. We cannot, quote unquote, what would we say? I cannot stomach that person. It's even in our language, right? I cannot digest that situation
Oh,
because
interesting.
there are certain situations in our life which, for us, subjectively, individually, we have more or less skills to cope with.
Now, can I just interrupt briefly, Daniele?
Of course.
Now, I think we should go back and talk a bit about what exactly led you to this journey of healing and and a little bit about your process over 20 years to get to the point where you've healed yourself now. Just a little bit of the backstory, maybe.
The backstory, and thank you for
Yeah.
asking that, your story right. The backstory is that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in my early 20s. I was probably 20, 21. And basically, because all of a sudden I had these symptoms out of the blue and I didn't know what to do. So, what did I do? I went to the doctor, I went through the normal diagnosis systems, went to the colonoscopy, which, by the way, was one of the most painful experience of my life because at that time they
Oh.
didn't even use anesthesia. So, that was very painful, right?
Mm.
And I was told to change my diet, to avoid certain foods, and they were basically stress related, and that there was basically nothing else to do.
Mm.
Because again, see, even nowadays, after over 20 years, that I decided to deal with what is called Crohn's disease, which is another special biological program, as we will see
Mm.
during our talks. Um, if you Google if there's a cure for Crohn, Google, sorry, which is I like to call it the oracle, or maybe the source of all knowledge nowadays,
Yeah,
says that there is no cure for Crohn,
correct. Yes.
right?
That
Instead,
seems to be typical from the industry is letting people know there's no way to overcome certain issues.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, and
Okay.
the answer to that I want to offer is that yes, doctors and scientists are very prepared, very uh, honest, probably most of them in good faith, and they're saying what they think. the point is that when a doctor says something, the something like that, I would answer like, "Doctor, have you ever made a mistake?"
Mm,
We all make mistakes, right? We have to consider that we're all humans,
yes.
and the reason why, to shortcut the story about my healing process, my self healing process, is that I've been always looking since the start for an alternative solution to conventional drugs, conventional medicine, even if it was a process, because it took me over 20 years.
Mm,
I started to study books about the meaning of symptoms, listen to your body, every symptom has a meaning. And it
hmm
took me a while to get to the point in which basically I understood that the symptoms is a message for me, was a message for me to create a practical, real change in my life,
mm.
because I was getting emotionally triggered by certain situations, just like the lion
Oh,
would trigger you if he was to show up now in your room, would trigger you
right.
also emotionally. The idea is that if you live in Africa, imagine you live in Africa and you know that it happens very often that the lion can show up in your room. Instead
hmm
of freaking out every time, maybe you want to create some skills for you to cope with it, right? Maybe you want
Yeah.
to buy a gun and learn how to use it if the line is really in this funny metaphorical speech,
Yeah.
right? You would, if there is a situation in which you get triggered, you want to basically learn those skills on how to practically manage and cope with that situation,
Oh, wonderful.
right? So, to conclude, was I able to start explaining my experience enough? So basically, what I'm trying to say is that I started to have this Crohn's disease symptoms. That's how it's called. Of course, I had no idea of the reason of the cause, which is something that happens many, many times nowadays when people have symptoms and chronic symptoms that we don't
hmm
really know what it is, what they're coming from. So we get confused, we get scared, we get worried, and unfortunately, this confusion, this fear, and this worry is actually, by being a trained hypnotist, is actually one of the ways in which we become very suggestionable.
Okay.
We become very easily manipulated by whatever is going on, whatever we are exposed to.
Mm,
Okay. So the unfortunate thing is that it's not empowering to be scared, to be worried, and to be confused about what was going on. But what's empowering is to figure out what it is actually is going on and to
right.
make some smart choices about it, right? So what I realized is that it's very important to learn how, at least the basic of how this special biological program work, at least the one related to the symptoms that we're dealing with, in this case, the digestive symptoms, so that we know what's happening and we know how to make smart choices, not only to manage the symptoms, but eventually also to create those changes, those practical, real changes in our life, so that we're not stuck in certain loops anymore.
Yes.
Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
It does, yes. And I'm wondering if you were to summarize your journey briefly and a bit about how you started your self-healing process. You said you were quite sick at the time, and it sounded like you were ready for real change. And a lot of times it seems like for quite a few of us, especially myself, it seems like I'm not willing to put in that effort to change unless something gets quite difficult. It, it seems like when things are just kind of going along status quo, most people are comfortable in that situation. And then the universe has to come along and say, you're ready to make a big change and give you a challenge. And
That's right.
it seems like when you had that big challenge and had enough of feeling the way you did that you wanted to change. And that led you to, did that lead you to hypnotherapy, or did you have experience with that before? Or was that something you learned?
So you're totally right. We get to create massive changes with this. The massive change is something that we need to create, and we're able to create, as Tony Robbins, I believe, says, either out of inspiration or desperation,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so we need to be what is called also from the work of Mike Mandel, one of my hypnosis trainer. We need to be a threshold, meaning that three things need to
Threshold.
happen for us to create the change. We need to understand that something needs to change.
Okay.
It needs to be me to create
Hmm.
that change, and it needs to be now. Meaning that the change can be also a process, but I need to start now.
Yes.
I need to understand that I'm responsible for the change, so it has to be me. It's not that something else needs to change, and something needs to change. When all these three components are present, that's when the person is ready and will create that change that is necessary to create the transformation, and in this case, self-healing process. So
Well,
to make it to say it in another metaphorical way, the symptoms actually are messengers and actually a gift, because that's how our biology is telling us that we need to grow, we need to evolve,
yes.
right? Rather than being victims. And the hypnosis, the question about hypnosis, if I look back, I always been interested, because when I was a teenager, I used to create my own tapes at that time, which were basically self-hypnosis tape,
Mm.
to create states, to create in myself states of relaxation and change, and working on my visualizations. Okay,
Mhm.
and then later, I always was always in the back of my mind I wanted to be a hypnotist. And then finally, in 2016, I got my first certification as a certified hypnotist, and I got other certifications. And basically, the idea is that I want to lead people to understand the biology and the hypnosis aspects of life, because it's only by knowing how we really work that we can become more free, have more choices, and be more empowered, right?
Mm.
So there is certain biological principles that are, or laws, or rules that our body follows, that we should be aware of. And there is also this hypnosis aspect. The hypnosis is something that, it's a word that is a little bit tricky, because many people are unaware of what it really is. But it's something that
Okay.
we naturally happens all the time. When we are watching a movie, when we're watching something in a movie that is makes us either laugh or cry, or freak out or be scared, because maybe it's a horror movie, that's already hypnosis. Because even if we consciously know that that's just a movie, we're still getting emotionally involved, right?
Right.
And that's already part of the hypnosis, what we can call hypnosis. So hypnosis to me is more than hypnosis. I prefer to call it like, I prefer to de-hypnotize people from the false fears and worries that they let something or somebody, or we let something or somebody condition us to have.
Wow. So lots of the times the fears weren't even our own. Maybe we just picked them up as we talked about lots in the past, from the environment, from where we were raised, from the people we're around.
Modeling, especially
Hmm.
doing from the people we grew up with, which is most of the times our parents.
Mm.
We just absorb, especially in the first 6 7 years of life.
Right.
We know kids are just uh, very easily able to learn and absorb everything without putting any judgment on it,
Hmm.
because there is not that critical faculty that exists yet in a little kid, or most of the
Right.
time it doesn't exist, because the kid is just learning, absorbing everything about how to manage and how to be in the world, right? If you like it happened one time, I was walking on the beach, and well, probably you have noticed, and I noticed this little kid that just hurt himself, right? You know that when a little kid falls down, they just started to walk, and when they fall down for one of the first times, or they hurt themselves, they scratch, they have a wound. When they're very little, between 2 or 3 years old, or even smaller, what is the first thing that they do after something, after they fall down?
Well, I'll give a couple examples, but a lot of times if it's something minor, I see a lot of kids look around.
Yes. And if you notice, basically they are looking mostly at their mom
Hmm.
because at that age the mom is way more important than the father. So basically, something unexpected happened. They look at the mom to learn how what to do.
Mm.
So in that age, the mom is like the most important figure, probably the most powerful hypnotist for the little kid.
Wow.
And basically, the kid is learning like, okay, what am I supposed to do about this? So if the mom is like, oh, you're fine, everything is good, it's gone, we'll take care of it, everything's gonna be fine. That's one message. If the mom says like, oh, what's wrong with you? Oh, are you okay? You
Hmm.
know, it's a totally different message, right? So, and you also, besides the message, even like the emotion that mom is experiencing, right? That's what can create empowering state or limiting state or phobias or panic attacks.
Mm.
Uh, many times when we, as hypnotists, we help people overcome phobias, like for example, spider phobias. We find that
Okay.
they get to be created because the person had an experience which they're not even aware of consciously
Mm.
until they go into this relaxed hypnotic state in which the first experience with the spider, it was processed in a traumatic way because one of the parent or somebody was freaking out because of the spider being a danger,
Oh, sure.
right? So that's basically, yeah. So the hypnosis work is something that gets to is pointed to reframe that first experience that was traumatic, and sometimes it's even buried in the unconscious mind because when something is very traumatic we don't even remember about it,
Mm.
right? And reframe that based on the fact that yes, it might have been a trauma, but the fact that you're now talking to me, it means that
Hmm.
you survived,
Right.
right? So that's the first proof that you made it. So you're a survivor and not a victim anymore.
Mm.
And you can just learn what you need to learn from that experience and let go of the negativity.
Right. And we
That's in a
touched base on
nutshell
it
the
quickly
process.
before, just like the memories there about reframing, like you said, the experience, not seeing it as a negative thing anymore, understanding it's in the past and taking the charge out of it. And one day you might forget it, but even if you do remember it, it doesn't elicit that emotional reaction, or and that
Totally.
might also manifest physically, like you were talking about as well.
Yes. And then again, the idea, the empowering information is that um, the point is to understand that whatever happens in our body is intelligent, but from a biological point of view, not
Mm.
from an intellectual point of view. Because the intellectual point of view is just programmed by our culture, our family, the schooling that we went through.
Hmm.
There is a biological intelligence that we need to know, at least the basics, because when we know it, and then when we have a symptoms, we don't freak out anymore,
Mm. Correct, because we understand.
right? But we understand, oh, I sneezed because I just went through this special biological program that was about me feeling stink, either
Okay.
literally or metaphorically. And so by solving that stink activation, the process led me to sneeze. Sometimes you sneeze for no reason.
Yes. I sneeze all the time every time I see the sun.
Okay, so that could be that could be an anchor, right?
Okay.
But basically, it is to understand. Like the point is that if you sneeze, you're not worried, right? Okay, it's a sneeze, it's
Yeah,
gone, right?
just a sneeze. Yeah.
The point is that if we get certain symptoms that are a little bit more serious, like has to do with pain, has to do with inflammation, has to do with blood, what do? We go to a doctor.
Hmm.
And by the way, the doctor are amongst the most powerful hypnotists in the world.
Right.
You know that, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Why is
we've
that?
chatted about that too because their suggestion, they hold a place in society where they're given a lot of respect, and most people look up to them and take their word as, this is the final
Truth.
word. The doctor's the
Yeah,
expert. But like
yeah,
you mentioned
and
before, maybe everyone can make a mistake, and
that's right.
I feel like a lot of prognoses people get are based strictly off of the knowledge that they have at this moment. But we could also say that the knowledge in the medical industry isn't incredibly advanced. They don't really
That's
treat certain
that's
diseases
true.
any different than they did 100 years ago. So,
Not only the if you think about it, most of the times, commercial medicine they don't know what is the real cause, right? And
correct.
they admit that they don't know what the real cause. Yet, even if they don't know what's the real cause, they think they have they know if it's curable or not,
Yes.
right? Or they assume that they know what the solution is, even without knowing the cause, or if there is a solution again, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
just
it's a little
to
bit, yeah, go ahead.
digress what we were talking about before. So you received a prognosis at the hospital, I'm guessing from the doctors, and what was it they told you when you were in the emergency room that day when
Ah,
you felt
yes,
like
when I
you were
was
going to
in the
die?
emergency room,
Yeah.
it was in 2017, and basically, um, I was, I didn't realize, but I was very anemic. I was just rear-ended in a car accident, a minor car accident. So, but I ended up in the emergency room because I wanted to just double check about the whiplash, And
Mm,
just by looking at me, I say, maybe you want to run the blood test on you or check what's going on because you look very weak. And they realized I realized, of course, that I was very anemic, also because of the Crohn's disease symptoms that I was going through. And
mm,
without going into detail, basically, the idea is that I was needing to create a massive transformation in my life
right.
to overcome those symptoms. I knew that there was a way for me to do that. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, which is the
Yeah.
process that I went through and I created, and I was also coached to go through. Um, and again, the idea is that I knew enough, and I didn't know everything, but I knew enough that I decided to sign out of the ER, the emergency room, because I knew that even if doctors are in good faith, and they believe in what they say or what they do, sometimes they don't realize that they are the most powerful hypnotists, both in a good way or in a limiting way. Because
Mm,
again, if you have a cold, if you sneeze or if you have a cold, you don't get worried. But if you have some symptoms that you don't really know what's going on, and you go to a doctor,
mm.
and the doctor says, "Oh, that's a tumor," that's already programmed in the language. Tumor is a word that comes from the French tumor, also in Italian it's called tumore, which means tu means you, more is the same root of morire, to die. So just by
Oh,
saying the word tumore, basically the doctor is saying to the patient, you are going to die.
incredible.
That's why
The
most
language.
people, when they receive the diagnosis of tumor or cancer, most
Yeah.
of them are going to freak out.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is that freaking out response, which is conditioned by the knowledge, the skills, and the experience of the person, is going to impact the health too. Why? Because Candace Pert teaches us through her recognized research, as she was the scientist that discovered the molecules of emotion. When I
Mm,
experience fear, worry, or anger, or any emotion, even positive, of course, my brain and my body is producing this cocktail of real chemicals, substances, neuropeptides, peptides, hormones, and so on. We are going to all the details. But basically, these are real chemicals that flush all my body, and they have a physiological impact. We know that just one molecules of adrenaline can produce, I believe, is a million molecules of sugar.
oh, wow.
Can lead to the production in the body of a million molecules of sugar. So what I'm saying is that, unfortunately, conventional medicine hasn't realized how important it is yet, or they haven't given enough value the importance of our emotion.
Yes.
They know about placebo. They know about nocebo, which is a bad brother of placebo. I'm
Okay.
going to actually create, we're going to talk about this probably in the next time, or I want to create also some training on this. They know that this the placebo and the nocebo, but they don't really know where it comes from. They kind of know it comes from the belief, but then we need to go to like how do we create our belief system, right?
And
The
why
belief
isn't more
system.
importance put on investigating the placebos and how it actually works when these people just thought they were taking the product and they got
Well,
cured, but the only thing that happened was they thought differently
that's right, or they felt differently,
or
especially,
felt
right?
differently, especially.
Right.
Yeah.
There is the answer is that there is not that much money in telling people that that much money to make in telling people that basically they most of the time they just have fear. And one of the assumptions that I would like to highlight is that we as a society are always assuming that when we have a symptom, we go to the doctor gives us a therapy or a medicine or a drug. If we get better, we always assume it's because of the drug, the therapy, or the therapy that the doctor gave us.
Sure.
Well, it's not necessarily true
Hmm.
because actually, when we study our biological processes, we know that just like animals, wild animals, have the capacity to heal ourselves. Actually, most of the time, we just heal ourselves, no matter if we take a medicine or not. We just need to understand the process and manage it and make it run its course in the most empowering way.
Mm.
So, I mean, there is so much to talk about.
Yes, so much.
Right? But we want to focus, maybe you just focus for this first time we were talking together
Mm.
is probably the emotional component, right? And the educational, the knowing at least the basic about our biology, knowing that when we have symptoms, there is symptoms that we experience in most cases when we are already quote unquote healing, when we're already overcoming the stress. Because again, going back to the example of the lion, you know that if a lion shows up, you're gonna go in fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, you might be running for your life. You're gonna beat the record in 200 meters to run for your life again away from the lion. And when you do that, you're not thinking, you're just doing, right?
Yes.
It's only afterwards that you realize what happened, that you're gonna feel the emotional, and then you're going to know that you're going to feel that your body is going to have to catch up from you running for 200 meters as fast as you could, right?
Mm.
So there is an active phase to solve the problem of the lion or whatever triggered you, and then there is a reparation phase. During the reparation phase, that's when we get to experience most of the time the symptoms that we don't understand.
Mm.
Like another example, it's very well known that if you probably work out regularly, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
besi-
2, 3 times a week.
besides that, you know that if you go over your regular working out limit, if you push over your limit, right, you know
Mm.
that you're going to experience soreness in your muscles the day after
Yes.
or the days after, right? Why is
Hmm.
that?
Well, you pushed past your usual limit, I guess you would say, or maybe you expanded your
Yeah, but what is the
beyond your limit.
physiological process that is getting you to experience pain in your muscles?
Oh,
Do you know
I'm not
about that,
sure.
or like, okay? So basically, the idea is this: basically, by going over your limit, the experience and the quote unquote message that you gave your biological and conscious mind is that you need stronger muscles.
Mm.
In order to build stronger muscles, there's going to be a physiological process of also inflammation in your muscle, in which basically the old muscle fibers are going to replace with new and stronger ones.
Okay.
And the inflammation is what creates the pain.
Mm.
Yet, if you work over your working out limits and you get sore muscles the day after, you don't get worried about it. You don't go to the doctor, right?
No.
Because you know it's normal, it's well known.
Yeah.
Instead, there are many other processes that our body goes through that we are not aware of, that we don't have any explanation, any understanding, that we should just, how do you say it, facilitate, right, in their evolution. And he said that if we freak out, like imagine if you were to go to the doctor when you got sore muscles after working out over your limit because you have no idea. You're like, oh my god, what the hell is going on with me? You go to the
Right.
doctor tells you there's something wrong with you. You're gonna be scared and worried, and you're probably gonna believe in what the doctor is gonna tell you,
Right.
and maybe you're just gonna do whatever the doctor tells you to do.
Well, I've experienced that and the opposite as well when you sometimes have a something come up you're not used to and you go to the doctor and they tell you, "Oh, it's just this little simple thing." And immediately, as soon as they say that, your stress just disappears.
Because you put
Yeah.
your trust and your faith into the doctor.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, most doctors are know what they're talking about. The thing is that again, the doctors are very powerful hypnotists because we, as a society, assume that they're pretty much always right,
Correct.
even when
Yes.
they
So,
give us diagnosis or prognosis that are not very encouraging
mm,
or they're pretty negative, right? It's, there is this research that I've been doing and what I'm gonna share pretty soon, in which basically they realize that this, for example, this person was diagnosed with a cancer, and the doctor said, okay, this with this cancer you have 3 months to live. When doctor says that, we need to understand how they're able to say that. They say that based on statistics.
okay.
The statistics, we need to understand that those statistics take into consideration the people that are working with the doctor, not the people like me or maybe like you or anybody else who signed out of the ER. And they maybe that doctor doesn't even know that I actually overcame Crohn's disease and anemia, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not even going to their statistics, right? So they don't
Right.
even take into consideration the cases like me. So it's just a statistic, it's not the truth. But if the person believes that that's the case, that is one case in which probably somehow they figure out this person died after 3 months, and they figure out it was just because he was told he was going to live only 3 months.
Uh,
Because they did a biopsy on him for legal reasons, because there was something else going on, or maybe insurance or something, and he didn't die because of the cancer.
uh,
They couldn't figure out why he died, and the only conclusion that they could make it was that he believed that he was supposed to die after 3 months, and that's when he died.
Scared to death.
So imagine how powerful our mind, our belief systems are,
Yeah, incredibly.
and there is
And,
many examples like that. Go ahead.
and so curing yourself, like you said, you self healed yourself with your beliefs. Um, what else would you attribute it to?
So the process that I created, and I have to admit, it was very important for me to be coached to this through this process, because having somebody to guide you when you are in pretty bad shape, because I was very anemic. I was waking up from bed in the morning and I was standing up and I was feeling like fainting
Mm,
as a result of the anemia. Like my blood, my iron my blood was very low, right? So I was being coached with the motto at that time was to be patient and be constant. To what? To be very mindful about what I was eating, being aware of the energy, the nutritions, and the quality of the food I was putting in my body,
mm,
being very picky, very mindful about that, cooking for my every meal, going groceries, choosing my body needed at that time, cleaning, cutting, cooking, and eating. So I was totally completely aware of what I was putting in my body, as our food can be considered from macrobiotics point of view is called our medicine, right?
Yes,
Can
definitely.
be. And the other thing I was doing that was very important was at that time was walking at least 1 hour a day as fast as I could,
Hmm.
considering I was very weak, and also being very mindful about the person I was, the people and the persons I was interacting with, choosing the person, being very picky about choosing the person who were positive and empowering towards me, and avoiding the persons that were putting me down or disempowering or negative against me. So that was to summarize the main three components in which I was able to self-feel, being
Wow.
guided through a coach, because I needed somebody to push me and to just letting me know that by being patient and constant, I was going to make it. It took me 6 months to completely self-heal, so it was not a short period.
Wow.
But after that, my symptoms were completely gone. If that answers your
Yes, yeah,
question.
it's incredible. And how long has that been?
2017, so it's been almost 7 years now.
Wow, incredible. And just with belief in the mind, is there anything
No, I want to let me interrupt you there. It's not the
yeah, yeah.
belief and the mind. I want to, that's very important. It's good that you
Okay.
said that. It's not the belief and the mind, it's the practical change.
The practical
It's
change.
creating practical, real, material change in our life. Is by cooking, eating in a certain way, going groceries, choosing certain ingredients, preparing them, cooking them, and eating them. That was one component. Working out, it became workout. But the first was just walking because I was only able to walk. I wish I was gonna be able to play beach volleyball, which is one of my favorite sport activity. But at that time, I couldn't even walk. So how am I gonna play beach volleyball? So I was just
Wow.
gonna I was just walking as 1 hour a day, every day, as fast as I could to oxygenate my blood
Mm,
and my body, right? So it's a practical thing. It's not just a belief. Like the belief, it's important. It's an important aspect. But again, the trick that I see, and I want to expand upon this one of the next talk, is that unfortunately, most of the time people think it's just about finding the emotional cause of the problem or finding the cause of the problem in general. But
mm,
finding the cause of the problem is very tricky. Actually, can be even more of a problem because if I think that I have a problem and I know the cause, that's not gonna give me the solution necessarily. Actually,
mm,
most of the day, it doesn't give me the solution. The solution comes from creating the skills, the practical changing, and sometimes massive transformation. Because the more we've been dealing with something, the more the transformation needs to be impactful, and by creating that transformation is how we self-feel, is how we let our body complete the process of self-feeling. So it's
okay.
not just mind here. Is and that's the unfortunate thing. Many people are just focusing on okay, oh, this is you are. I have to admit this. I used to being coached before I healed myself by other coaches in good faith, very prepared, very. I respect them nowadays. I even talk with them sometimes still because they're still great coaches. But at that time, they were only able to say, "Oh, you have the symptoms because you are dealing with this type of emotion."
Mm,
Okay, but that wasn't giving me any result, any solution. Because
mm,
if I know that I'm dealing with this emotion and that's the root cause of my symptoms, because basically in certain situations I get emotionally triggered, that doesn't tell me how to change so that I don't get emotionally triggered anymore.
no, it doesn't.
Doesn't make sense. So we need to focus on the cause and not even necessarily all the time, but we need to focus necessarily on the solution. The
Oh,
solution is what makes the difference, right?
yeah,
So
big
it's
time.
not just a mindful thing. It's a very practical thing.
I was gonna say I have a list on my wall in the restaurant for team building in it. And it says, how to go above and beyond. And it says looking for solutions instead of dwelling on the problem.
And if you think about it, it's actually what is very normal in any business environment. And you
Mhm.
working as a restaurant manager and owner, you know that to make it simple, like if glass breaks, or dish breaks. Yes, okay. Maybe I want to figure out eventually how not to get back into the situation in which I keep on breaking glasses and keep breaking dishes. But
Mm.
in the moment, the restaurant is open, I clean and I move forward, right? I don't
Right,
just keep on saying, "Oh, whose fault is this?" Who do we need to complain for to blame for this, right?
right.
It's always a focus oriented outcome, positive outcome oriented attitude when
Mm.
you're in a business settings, right? So
Takes
you're
some
already a
submission.
master of that from the business point of view. The only thing is that we need to use that same business point of view regarding our health and wellness.
Wow,
What is the
that's great to
solution?
hear.
And the solution is not an external solution because even naturopath, and I used to work with a naturopath, which basically he realized this because he said, okay, naturopath is good because when you get natural remedies, the good thing is that they do have side effects,
Hmm.
like conventional chemical drugs do. And by the way, the wrong prescriptions is even officially there is official sources of mainstream information that recognize that the third cause of death in America is basically the side effect from drugs. Third cause of death in America,
Right.
right? So even if I use naturopathy and I don't use conventional medicine, so I avoid side effects, sometimes when people stop using those remedies, the symptoms come back. Why? Because
Mm.
they still need to create the practical transformation in their life. So everything is important. It's important to use natural supplements. It's important to eat good. It's important to create this holistic transformation in our life so that we are more skilled, emotionally centered, and we learn the lessons. Like every problem is a gift. The gift
Hmm.
is in finding the solution to that problem.
Yes, without great challenges, we can't raise to great heights. And there's a good quote that you can tell a measure of a person's success, how high they've achieved by how deeply they've failed in their life as well. And not to confuse the failure, temporary failure with permanent defeat, as Napoleon Hill
Yeah,
said. Yeah.
it's also in the language because unfortunately there are certain words that they didn't even exist some time ago, and then we're just giving it so much power and value, like the imposter syndrome. You know, there is not that people think that they're failing because of the imposter syndrome. To me, there is no imposter syndrome. There is just action and feedback.
Hmm.
Action and feedback. Then, and again, as you mentioned, there is no failure. Failure is another one of those tricky words, right?
True.
We shouldn't even talk about fear. There is just like it's just like Edison, right? You know that his colleagues and his employees apparently they used to think that he was crazy
Hmm.
because it took him around 10,000 times of tries to create the light bulb before he
Right.
found it, right? And every time he was failing it, he was celebrating. You know that, right?
I didn't know that part. No.
He was celebrating because he was like, I found another way in which I know this is not going to work. So I'm going to have to do something different.
One step closer to success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
basically, the idea is that every result that we get is feedback,
Hmm.
right? So we know that that way doesn't work. So let's do something different. That's the simple way to put it,
Hmm.
the easy way to put it. Awesome. I think we've been talking for quite a while now for
Yes,
our
learned a
first
lot.
talk today.
Lots of sharing. Yeah.
Okay. And in the back is the cover of my ebook, in which I talk about the transformation that I follow to self-heal myself from Crohn's and anemia, just to explain.
Hmm. And
Awesome.
then
So
was there anything that you'd like to sign out with? Any kind of to sum up about today's talk?
what I would like to some people to remember from this talk, if they got to listen up to this point, is that again, we always want to focus on the solution.
Hmm.
The symptom is a message, and the message is asking us to create some meaningful sometimes massive transformation in our life. And once we do create that transformation, the symptoms are going to be gone just as a consequence, as a result, as a positive result of our transformation. So the symptoms are just a call to action to create growth, personal growth, and evolution. Because one of the ways in which I like to talk about this, to summarize, is that we want to we want to always get to be our best self. When if I get to be my best self is not going to be sick. It's not going to
Right.
have chronic symptoms, right? So we want to every day create those improvements in our life in which we improve and we get closer and closer every day to become our best self. So that's the idea. And there is many different tools to use to say that, to use that, to create that, especially by creating rituals.
Rituals. Yeah, it's a very powerful one. And I'm looking forward to
Rituals are
hearing more about your systems and processes and learning a bit of what you do myself. And maybe we can do a teaching or a lesson live and people can follow along with certain
totally,
processes.
totally. And thank you for participating in line. I'm looking forward to do this more. We're want to do this on a weekly base and put it up there so that people can be inspired to do this. And if they want to do it faster, they want to do it more efficiently, I am ready and willing to share my experience and offer my guidance so that they can achieve what they want. Because again, like if I was able to go back in the past and offer all this information, empower information to my 20-year-old self, that first guy that diagnosed with Crohn's disease, he was not going to have to go through 20 plus years of Crohn's disease
Hmm.
because he would have understood and created the changes that he needed to create back then to overcome the symptoms and by becoming a better version of himself. And he said, since nobody was saying that at that time, saying this at that time, at least I didn't know anybody who was teaching me
Hmm.
that. I
Hmm.
had to go through my trial and error, trial and error, trial and error for over 20 years and figuring this out finally on our own, getting to threshold, getting to the point is like, yes, now I need to change something for real. And by changing something for real, instead of looking for an external solution, that's how I heal myself pretty much. And that's how the people I've been working with have been able to heal themselves too.
It's quite amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Danielle. I'm looking forward to talking again and learning
Thank
more.
you for participating. I was very happy to share with you, and I hope this is gonna be helpful to other people listening to this too. And we're gonna put on this on the social media and so that people can access. Awesome. We'll see you on the
Excellent.
next talk.
See you on the
Ciao,
next one,
Eli.
Danielle. Ciao.
Talk to you soon.